Let's begin to truly understand the Sketcher Workbench. What's up? I'm Jonathan and welcome to Maker Tales, where I'm sharing my maker journey to help you go further in yours. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell icon to never miss an opportunity to keep making. This video is sponsored by Thangs.com. And here we are with the end result of our first video. We have a fundamental understanding of what CAD design actually is. We know that we're not just using the normal version of FreeCAD, we're actually using a link branch version by Real Thunder. We know how to edit the UI, we understand workbenches, and we have a general understanding of how to get to this end result. If you don't have an understanding of all of that, I really suggest that you go to the first video before you dive into this one. Now let's go ahead and understand the Sketcher Workbench a little more. We're going to do that in a new file, so let's close this file, create ourselves a new file, and save it with Control S. I'm going to save this as Understanding Sketcher, hit save, and now do you remember the file structure that I told you should usually use? Go for a part, then go for a body, and then you can go for a sketch. Now we have to say that it's going to be on the XY because that's usually where we start from the top down, and we'll hit OK. And now we'll be back in the Sketcher Workbench. So as the Sketcher Workbench is so fundamental to what we're going to be doing here, we're going to break it up into 3 bite-size-ish videos. This video is going to cover all of these line making tools, along with some extra operations here and there. Then we will cover all of the constraints, both geometric and dimensional, and then we will put them both together to do some direct modeling to create our 3D printed box. At that point, we will have a full direct model 3D printed design ready to be turned into a parametric design. This way, we will have a full understanding of what exactly is being influenced when we change designs into a parametric design, and you can see the real difference between direct and parametric modeling. Now, with all of that said, let's dive straight into these tools. To activate a tool, you just go ahead and left click it, and that will be it active. Now, a whole bunch of these do have shortcuts, which is another way of activating the tool itself. Once active, you will have an icon that follows your mouse of the active tool. For instance, we have the point of the marker tool active, and that's following our mouse. To deactivate it, just right click and that will deactivate the tool. Starting off with that pointer marker, we'll activate it, we'll left click and place a few of these down. Now do keep in mind, these are not vertices, these are very much markers or points of interest. In fact, within the preferences, they are called markers. So here you will see marker size, what we changed to 15, that is those. Now we'll quickly cover selection. Selection is super simple. Left click to select one, left click to select another. You don't have to hold down any key to select multiple things. When you click outside away from something, that will deselect everything, and then we have our simple click and drag selection box to select many. To delete, it's just the simple delete key. We'll go on to the line tool next, which has the shortcut of L. So let's hit L, and that's another way of activating tools. It's very simple. Left click, you get a line. A quick note, I am not going to be telling you all of these constraints that are coming from these tools right this minute. That's all going to be part of the next video where you'll truly understand what all these constraints are that are defining the lines themselves. Next up, we have a couple of different ways of creating arcs and circles. This first one is a center and endpoint arc. So as it sounds, you click the center and then you click the 2 endpoints of the arc. Once again, that is the center and 2 endpoints. Very simple and intuitive. Next, we have endpoints and rim. Now that might be a little bit strange. What on earth is a rim point? So you left click. Those are the 2 endpoints. And this rim point is where do you want the edge of this arc to meet. Another way of creating it. Now that you understand what a rim point is, you'll understand this circle very quickly. This is a center and rim point circle. So center, rim point, also known as the radial distance right there of a circle. Now we get a little bit crazy. We have a 3 rim point circle. So as it sounds, this is 3 rim points making 1 circle. So 3 clicks makes that circle. Now we come to 2 tools that I don't use at all, which are Conic and B-Spline. Let me at least show you what we have here. We have ellipses, we have arcs and parabolas. Honestly, I don't use them, but by all means, feel free to go ahead and use them. I just don't know the math to truly constrain things properly to get outcomes that I want. And then when it comes to B-splines, they're fantastic and all, but you can't really control them to really be able to understand exactly what is going on, or at least I don't know how to control them. If you know and you truly have an engineering degree, you go for it. That's where they are, you go nuts with that. And now we get to the underdog of the line tools, the polyline. The shortcut of the polyline is M. Just think that you're creating an M with the polyline. That's how I like to think of it. And that's how many people sort of think of using the polyline. It's a way of creating nice, jaggedy, straight lines. But oh, are you so wrong? The people who are in the know this. Press M again to cycle through behavior. Let me show you just the magic that this can create. You go ahead and you create yourself a simple little line. You can now press M and you get yourself a perpendicular line. Press M again, you get yourself a tangential line. Press it again, you get yourself a tangential curve. Press it again, you get yourself a perpendicular curve. And yet again, you get a perpendicular curve in the other direction. I'm telling you, you need to master this. It will make modeling so much faster if you really take the time to master this tool. I know it will take time because I can tell you right now, I myself am still trying to learn this to a degree that I feel I could really go ahead and make anything with it. But for those that can really make something super interesting with this, you basically get an incredible time saver of creating lines with all the constraints that we will cover in the next video. The next three tools are very similar to one another. They basically create shapes, starting with a rectangle tool. So we'll go R for rectangle, click and click, you get a rectangle. Do be aware there's no way of holding down Shift or Control to snap this to a square shape, because that is the whole point of the next one, which are predefined shapes. So you've got triangle, square, pentagon, hexagon, heptagon, octagon, and a regular polygon. If you're wondering what a regular polygon is, it's basically you define how many edges this shape is going to have, and it will create that shape with a whole bunch of constraints for you. And you might also be wondering, what on earth is that blue line? Don't worry, you'll understand what that is by the end of this video. Then the very last line making tool is this slot or this pill shape. Very much like the rectangle tool, except it creates a rectangle pill shape for you with a whole bunch of constraints, which you will fully understand in the next video. Many makers have told you about Thangs, but do you really know why you should care and what it's all about? Instead of telling you that Thangs is the fastest growing 3D model community with 3 million free models to download, I would let you know that it's made by the world leader of 3D geometry deep learning technology. In other words, when you upload a file over to Thangs, it gets put through some incredible machine learning tech that helps you share and search files faster. Just as an example, you can already download a file from Thangs, remix it in some way, and then re-upload it to Thangs, and Thangs will automatically link them up just to make the searching so much faster. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, so make sure you check Thangs out using the link in the description. And that there is the last of the line making tools. Now we get to the operations, starting with the fillet. Now we need something to fillet, so let's press R for rectangle, create ourselves a nice little rectangle, click on the fillet tool, and there's two ways of using it. You can either click on a point, or you can click on two areas on an edge, and the further you go on these edges, the bigger that fillet is going to be. It's going to sort of do an average between the two distances and create that fillet. Now there is a little catch here. What happens if I wanted to be pedantic and I very much wanted to do a dimension from one point to another? When I do a fillet, I lose my point. Well, not if you use the drop-down fillet here, a constraint-preserving sketch fillet. You'll see now that when we go and do that exact same thing, we get an extra little point here, which is basically tied to the intersecting point of those lines, so you can go ahead and do a dimension between those 2 points. One of my favorite operations is the trim tool right here. So let's create 2 rectangles and let's go and use the trim tool. It does have a shortcut, but I can't seem to get it to work. So if you find a way of working it, let me know. You have to find an intersection point, pick one side of it, and then you'll be able to trim away. Just be aware that you can't just trim things that don't have an intersection with them. So you have to delete those manually. And that there is the trim tool. Now let's go from trimming to extending with the Extend Edge tool. Let's bring in 3 lines here to showcase this, and then we're going to click it to turn it on because I can't seem to get the shortcut to work. You click on an edge, you drag it out, and that's it extended. You can also click on an edge and drag it out to another edge. You can also click on an edge and drag it out to a point, and it will extend it to that point. That there is the Extend Edge tool. Now from this point forward, things are going to get just a little bit more complicated. Starting off with these 3 tools here. I'm just going to skip them over for right this minute, as I want to cover some other tools just before we dive into them. The 3 after this, I'm going to just not cover in this video at all, because 2 reasons. 1, I haven't needed to use them in over 200 hours of FreeCAD, and 2, I don't know really how to use them and the use cases for them. Once I do learn it and I think that it's useful for you to know, I'll be sure to add it in future videos. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and just drag this along to just hide them because I no longer need them. However, for now, let's go ahead and dive into some of the tools up here. I'm not planning to showcase them all, as some of them really do need some constraints to showcase them. But there are some that I really think are useful to know right now while you're doing the whole line drawing aspect of things. The first one is symmetry. Now let's create 2 simple lines for this. Here we have them. I want to create a symmetrical copy of this line on the other side of this line, using this line as the symmetrical axis. The one we're looking at is right here. Create symmetric geometry with respect to the last selected line or point. So that means select what it is you're wanting to do a copy of, then the last thing you select is going to be your axis of symmetry, and then you click that button, and lo and behold, the tool does what it says it does. There is a small caveat though. Keep in mind that this tool here does not keep dimensional constraints when you do that symmetry. So just keep that in mind. Now let's talk about 3 operations that you might not expect to be closely related. This is the move, copy, and clone operations. So let's create a nice simple rectangle here. And of course, first and foremost, if you want to move something, just select it, and then you can go ahead and move this line by line. But it's a little bit of a pain to be able to just move a sketch. Well, that's where the Move tool comes in. Have everything selected and then deselect where the main point is that you're wanting to move from, because that's how these operations work. The last selected element is pretty important for most of these operations. Now, the Move, copy, and clone all live right here. Now, let's just click Move, and you'll see we get this strange line coming off. As you can expect, wherever I click this line, it's going to move the sketch over there with relationship to the last selected thing. Now I'm not going to bother with the whole last selected thing anymore. I'm just going to select it all and tell you the shortcut for moving is Control M. And there we get that strange line once again. We click and we move it. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this now. I'll just select it. We'll go to the little drop down here and we'll hit copy. As you can see, like the Move tool, we have this line, and as you can expect, when I do a click, it's going to go ahead and copy that exact same sketch wherever we do that click. Now, Jonathan, surely a copy and a clone are the same thing, right? Yes, they are, but no at the same time. Let me show you this, but to do that, I need to go ahead and put a dimensional constraint. I know we weren't going to do constraints, but you already know what a dimensional constraint is, so I'm going to go with a Shift V to do a vertical dimensional constraint, set that to 25, something nice and simple, and hit OK. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that copy once again. We'll select this, go over to our copy tool, click copy, and as you can expect, when you click on this copy, we have a copy with the dimensional constraint. Great, but this doesn't tell you much about what a clone is. Surely that's a clone of what you just created. It is, but at the same time, you'll understand right now what I mean. Let's delete what we've just created there, select this, and now let's click the clone. So again, we get this nice line. Let's do a left click, but now there's no dimensional constraint. What on earth is going on? Now, this is because I haven't explained all the constraints just yet. This constraint right here is called an equal constraint, which means that these 2 lines have been constrained to one another, saying, hey, no matter what length this line is here, you need to be that length as well. So if we were to go ahead and change this to 30 now and hit OK, it's going to change that one. So this is a direct clone of whatever's happening over here. Now here comes the little bit of a caveat and a bit of a connection that I'm not too happy about. There is a shortcut to this, and the shortcut for copying is called Control-C. Yeah, as you can expect. However, because we just did a clone, this is going to create a clone, not a copy. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the clone. We'll go and use the tool as a copy now. I will now delete the copy, and now I will use the same shortcut, Control-C, and now we're going to do a copy instead of a clone. I know, it's a little bit weird, it's a little bit strange. Basically, the last operation that you use of copy clone is what is set to the shortcut. Now, let's go back and take a look at the three tools here that I completely skipped over. We're going to focus on this middle one first, which copies the geometry of another sketch. We understand how to copy and clone within one sketch, but what about from another sketch? That's what this tool is all about. A quick note, at this point, things are going to get just a little bit more complicated, and I'll do my absolute best to simplify it all the way down, and we'll try and be as clear as possible. We'll start this off by creating a nice simple rectangle. Right click to cancel the operation, and then we'll either close this, hit escape, or you can click this button here. We're back in the part design workbench now with a sketch of a nice simple rectangle. Now we're about to say sketch and many words far too many times, so let's try and simplify this all the way down by being super clear of what's going on here in our tree view. I'm going to double click our body to make that the active body. I'm going to right click it and go to rename, and I'm going to rename this body as body 1. And this sketch, I'm going to use the shortcut, which is F2, to rename it as sketch 1. Perfect. Let's go and create another sketch now. Creating another sketch, we'll say on the XY plane once again, we'll hit OK, and we'll go straight to the model view. I need to rename this sketch to keep things clear. F2, and we'll go for sketch 2. All right, we're inside of sketch 2, and this is the active task. This is why it is yellow. So here, this task, the active task of sketching, is in sketch 2, and it's yellow. I hope that makes sense. Let's double click into sketch 1. I'm only doing this so that you can see that now sketch 1 is going to be active because we're inside of sketch 1. We'll go back over to sketch 2. We're inside of sketch 2 now. However, we can see sketch 1 within sketch 2. We don't see any points, any constraints, but we see the lines. We can't interact with it with any way, but using the tool, we can. So this will copy the geometry of another sketch that we can see. Keep in mind that you can also not see this by just going space and it'll be hidden, or with a little eye, but also keep in mind that if it is hidden and you want to see what it is, just mouse over it and eventually you'll get this sort of selected view that comes up while your mouse is over it. So inside of sketch 2, we'll use the tool by clicking on sketch 1, and lo and behold, we have a lovely copy of sketch 1 within sketch 2. And this is a copy, not a clone, which means that if sketch 1 changes, it's not going to go ahead and change sketch 2. So we'll hide sketch 1 just to show you that sketch 2 now has that exact copy right here. There is a caveat to this though. You can get something called an out of scope copy or an out of scope reference, whatever you want to call it, which basically means you won't be able to copy the sketch. And this usually happens when a sketch is outside of the body that you're trying to copy in. So we will exit this task. We'll close this. I just want to show you it quickly. We're going to delete this sketch. I'm going to very quickly create another body. We'll rename this body as body 2. Then I will create another sketch within body 2, again on the XY plane. I'll click OK. And now we can see we are inside of body 2. We will rename this sketch as sketch 2. And we have body 1. You cannot see sketch 1 right this minute. So let's go ahead and turn on sketch 1 so that we can see sketch 1 inside of body 2. Let's go and use the tool like we would think we would be able to, and you'll get this big error. It's not possible to do that. You just cannot do that copy across two bodies. I like to think of a body as two separate rooms. You can't copy a drawing from somebody else in a different room unless there's some sort of magical thing going on, and there is a way of doing that, which is actually what we're going to be covering in the next tool here. So let's go and cover this next tool. Again, we need to do some prep. So we're going to close this task. We will just completely delete body 2 now. We will create yet another sketch inside of body 1. I'll select it just in case it doesn't do anything crazy for me. I'll go here, say on the XY plane once again, and we'll hit OK. I'll go back to the model view, quickly change this name over to Sketch 2. And now we're ready to play about with this lovely operation here. These are external geometry references. Now, they can get quite complicated quite quickly, so I'll go really steadily through it. But there's two ways of doing this. There's an external geometry reference, and then there's something called a defining geometry reference. So let's start with a simple one of external geometry reference. Take a look, there's a shortcut, XX. So I'll go ahead, we'll press XX, and here we have the tool now active. So we are inside Sketch 2. I can see Sketch 1. I can now click on Sketch 1, and we will get these purple lines. What on earth are these purple lines? Let's close this, and let's try and move them. Well, we can't move them. Over in our task, we can see that they're here, and they're external edges. What about if I go into part design and I hide Sketch 1? You can't see them, so what does that tell me about these references that we've just made? It means that these references aren't seen as lines, so to speak. But you can't move these, so how would I move them then? Well, what I'm creating here is a link with Sketch 1. So you would actually have to change Sketch 1, and then in Sketch 2, those referenced lines have moved. Now, this is very powerful when you go and mix it up with a whole bunch of constraints, but as is, this means that those are sort of useless without constraints and all the rest. They are powerful, it's a way of linking things up, but what if I wanted these to actually be lines to go ahead and, I don't know, let's make another shape from the shape that we already have inside of Sketch 1? Well, that's where the next one comes in. That's what a defining geometry reference is. What is defining geometry? Well, these lines here, they're defining lines. They tell you what exactly is going on within Sketch 1. Now, the shortcut for a defining line is XC. So let's go XC, and we get this nice pinkish sort of looking tool. And now when we click on these lines, you'll see we get these pink lines instead of the purple lines. Let's go back over to the part design workbench to take a look at what's going on. You can see now that Sketch 2 has two lines that are seen as lines, as defining references, but they're driven by Sketch 1. Now, if we go back into Sketch 2, we can't change these. We can use a whole bunch of the tools underneath these, and those let you detach them, attach them, toggle them, freeze them, and fix them. But in reality, only if things go wrong you start using these, or if all of a sudden you've decided, actually, I love it where it is right this minute, but I no longer need it to be referenced, that's when you use these tools. So I'm not going to show you them. They very much, what you read and what you see is what they do. There's not much to it. Now, I want to turn these into defining geometry as well. So I'm going to go ahead, select it, and just delete it. I'll select this one and just delete it. And now I'll use the shortcut XC, and let's create those into defining references as well. Now, we're about to do something very strange that you usually do not do at all in CAD design, but I just want to show you how these are now defining references. We'll go into our part design, and Sketch 2 now is completely created by defining references of Sketch 1, which means that Sketch 2 can now be padded out or made thick using these defining references. So this pad is now driven by Sketch 2, but Sketch 2 is controlled by Sketch 1. I know, it's very weird. Let's go into Sketch 1. Let's just quickly change this in some way, go back to our part design workbench, and you can see that that has changed sketch 2, which is driving the pad. All right, now let's talk about what exactly is meant by geometry, because I've just gone and showed you all of that referencing on lines. Well, let's delete this pad, delete this sketch, and now we just have sketch 1 here. Sketch 1 is ready to be padded out, so let's pad this. We've padded it, we'll go for 10, we'll hit OK. Brilliant. Now, I'm about to do another pad, so we need to rename this as well. So I'm going to change this as pad 1. Pad 1. Let's go ahead and create yet another sketch. Now this sketch though is going to be a side face reference. We did this in the first video, so we know what's going on here. We're basically just saying use that face as the plane. We'll click OK, and you can see we're now using that face as a reference. Let's go and rename this here. We'll rename the sketch as sketch 2. And now, when I say geometry, I very much mean anything that is defining geometry. Edges are defining geometry. Sketches are defining geometry. So let's create some defining geometry, not just external geometry. They are powerful, but I want defining geometry for this one. And we're going to define geometry using the edge of the pad itself. Okay, now we have a defining geometry from a pad. I hope you see the power in this. Let's go and use our multi-polyline, multifunctional tool here to create something crazy to go and just pad this out later on. So we'll do that, and brilliant, we have a closed shape. We'll go back to our part design workbench by closing the task, and let's pad this sketch 2 out. We'll pad it out, hit OK, and I will rename this pad right here. Now let's fully understand what's going on here. Pad 1 is driven by sketch 1, and now our sketch 2 is driven by a reference of pad 1's edge, which means that if I change pad 1 to be, let's say, a padding of 25 millimeters, that referenced edge that is driven right here is now going to change the shape of our actual sketch, which changes the pad. I hope that makes sense. It will take time to fully understand this and to get to grips with it, but that there is such an incredible referencing tool. And in all honesty, it's what all CAD programs basically do. They do this incredible referencing technique like that. But now let's go back and delete these pads. So we don't need these pads at all. We're going to also delete this sketch 2. I'll go back into sketch 1. I want to clear this little error because I don't like having that there. And now let's talk about the very last tool, which is this one here. Let's go ahead and just say it. This tool basically doubles everything that I've just shown you in this video to create something called a construction line. What's a construction line, you might ask? Well, a construction line is basically a line that is used for the construction means of a sketch. So we can select this entire sketch right here, press this button, and it's going to turn it into that blue line that we saw. Where did we see that blue line? Well, when we were creating our own custom shape here, we can go ahead, go like this, and you'll see that we have that blue line. That's what that blue line was. It was a construction line. Now, construction lines are extremely powerful when you mix them up with constraints and dimensions, and wow. Just for instance, this shape right here, this is all just constraints to this construction line with a number of edges, and that's how they've created that shape. Now, the way of using a construction line is you can either change lines into construction lines, or with nothing selected, change the entire tool set into construction lines. Now with that lovely bombshell, I'm going to leave that video there because we have covered everything to do with line drawing and a whole bunch of extra tools as well. Well done for getting through that first video of line creation. As you see, there's a lot of different ways of creating lines within FreeCAD, and then there's a lot of ways of editing those lines and doing other operations with them. Not to mention in the next video when we talk about constraining lines and then bringing it all together in that last video. A huge thank you to my patrons. You guys are absolutely awesome and it really means so much to me and it makes Maker Tales and these videos possible. And if you're enjoying what I'm making here and you think I'm worthy of your support, I would love to see you there too. Don't forget that we do have a Discord and that's linked down in the description. Thank you for watching, keep making, and let the quest continue.